Hello, I'm Jan Lewiński and you're watching TVP World Talks, where every word matters. Donald Trump has picked J.D. Vance for his future vice president. What does it mean for America and what does it mean for European security? We're going to examine that with our guest, Joshua Burgin from the Warsaw Security Forum. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning and thank you for having me.
So, very quickly, the meaning of J.D. Vance possible being a future vice president for Ukraine. His stance on Ukraine is well known, but is it really that dangerous for the entire process?
So I think if we look holistically, Trump has consistently been skeptical of international wars. This was consistent in the first administration and now potentially the second. Vance, I think, signals two things. One, I think he signals a new generation of Republican leadership, no longer the era of the Bushes, and even Trump understands his own mortality, notwithstanding the recent assassination attempt. And this would be the first sort of Gen X. In fact, he's not even Gen X. I believe Vance is a millennial. It represents a sea change from the past in terms of baby boomers that have led our politics now for the better part of 50 years. What this means for Ukraine, I mean, obviously, as a transatlanticist, someone who's deeply concerned about Ukraine, I watch these statements with some concern. Nevertheless, I'm also well aware that a future Trump administration would have voices like Mike Pompeo, would have voices like Pottinger, would have voices like Morgan Ortagus, who are also deeply concerned, very much hawkish on Russia and hawkish on the Ukrainian position in the sense that we should support Ukraine in its ongoing fight to push back against Russian aggression.
So do you think these classical Republicans would be able to rein in these isolationist tendencies represented by Trump and even more so by J.D. Vance?
Well, it's worth noting that in a past life, I was a Republican political campaign consultant. There's a lot of rhetoric that goes into campaign that then becomes somewhat muted or less poignant within governance. We don't know exactly what the Trump administration is going to look like on foreign policy exactly. Yes, there are concerns. Again, I share those concerns around some of the messaging coming out right now. But again, a lot of this is also tied to domestic politics. In the Polish context, for instance, we saw foreign nation states attempting to push immigrants across the border, and Poland built a wall. Building a wall was a big piece of Donald Trump's rhetoric, which was also about unstopped flows of foreign immigrants coming into the United States. There's lots of debate and discussion around the utility of foreign immigrants or undocumented immigrants coming into countries, but nevertheless, there's also national security risks. And I believe that certainly you see people who are saying, how can we spend so much in Ukraine while we haven't secured our own border? And even this resonates with me, and yet I'm a strong supporter of Ukraine and quite hawkish on Russia. So a lot of things are playing out. We're also witnessing, as I sort of touched on, that generational change, as many of baby boom leadership around the globe are coming to a point where they will not be leading for forever, and we can see a foreseeable end to this. We're also seeing a bit of transition and change as the mood in the country is shifting. We're seeing things we've never seen before at a Republican National Convention. A leader of a union, the Teamsters Union, shows up and addresses the Republican National Convention. This is earth-shattering, and there's a great deal of shifting taking place at the moment. So a lot of these questions simply can't be answered just now.
Now, J.D. Vance did not really appear out of nowhere, but some commentators are saying that some of the billionaires from Silicon Valley have been instrumental in his rise to the position that he is in right now. So basically, a vice president in the waiting, almost. Judging by the recent events, it's more than likely that Trump might win this. But what about the influence of people such as Elon Musk or especially Peter Thiel, who used to be Vance's employer, and he has been his mentor throughout the years? Does it also pose certain questions? Do you think that this is a cause for concern?
Well, certainly I've seen the same headlines, the same rumors. The notion that Thiel was instrumental in Vance's Senate campaign is obvious. The rumors that Musk was lobbying on his behalf also clear. Musk plays a particularly interesting role, both with SpaceX, Starlink. Starlink has been deeply important for Ukraine, and this is obviously not something that Starlink is doing at zero cost to either the U.S. government or to Ukraine at the same time. So I'm sure there's some sort of multiple interests in play even there. the U.S. system has always had, at least in the last 100 years or so, a somewhat outsized influence in terms of those with money and power. And the notion that they would be lobbying for someone they believe advances their interests is not surprising to me. The notion that the Trump team would look to someone they believe to be loyal or at least aligned with their values is also not particularly surprising.
But I mean, the question was being raised because of the fact that, for example, I mean, these people are closely related. They form like a circle of friends. But more importantly, one of the biggest social media networks is controlled by Elon Musk. So it's basically, some people say, oh, they are basically weaponizing it.
Oh, I mean, come on. The notion that there's one outlet that's controlled by Elon Musk, this is true. You also have Facebook. We also have LinkedIn, where there's multiple other outlets for these things. These social media outlets are becoming very similar to the balkanization that we saw in broadcast television some years ago, where you have Fox, MSNBC. I'm not deeply concerned about this. Again, if we look at the totality of Elon Musk's projects, the notion of his latest Starship that has yet to fully become operational, but they're around the fifth test. This is a vehicle that'll put something like 200 tons into space, and an unprecedented amount of weight, outstripping everybody else. The notion that there's not dual use implications to this, and the notion that Elon Musk isn't deeply intertwined within the U.S. defense and the defense apparatus for reasons of his various tools. This is hard to believe. I believe all these guys are Americans, even though some are non-native born. Thiel and Musk have completely embraced America, and though they may have differing views on what our foreign policy should look like from the current status quo, I don't question or doubt their desire to see America strong and effective. And the notion that they would play a role in politics is not surprising, and I don't think should surprise really anyone.
On the other hand, of course, this is a question of the accountability of social media networks and the role that they play in democracies, being unelected and powerful and able to influence the results of elections. This, however, is perhaps a topic for another conversation. For the time being, Joshua Burgin was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insight.
Thanks for having me on today.
And I'm Jan Czerwiński, you're watching TVP World. Please do stay with us for more latest news and updates.